She was fired for singing in the storage room, but a passenger mentioned her voice in the news. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Tara Matthews gripped the edge of the dusty metal shelf and tried to steady her breathing. The fluorescent lights in the storage room flickered sporadically, casting uneven shadows across the towers of inventory and expired labels she'd been organizing for the past 3 hours. No one ever came back here. It was her sanctuary away from the watchful eyes of Richard Goldstein, the perpetually displeased manager of Matthews Pharmacy, which, despite sharing her surname, belonged to no relation of hers. Tara's fingers moved methodically through the stack of outdated price tags, while her mind drifted elsewhere. Without conscious thought, a melody began to form in her throat, a soft, broken little tune that escaped her lips as naturally as breathing. It was all she had left of herself, a habit from better days when her husband was alive and she still believed in Sundays. The storage room was cold, windowless, and smelled of damp cardboard. But when she sang in there, just for herself, she almost remembered who she used to be. Before the funeral, before the bills, before the crushing weight of single motherhood had bent her shoulders into a permanent curve of exhaustion. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound! The words flowed from somewhere deep within, a place she'd almost forgotten existed. Her voice trembled slightly at first, then strengthened, filling the small space with a richness that seemed to transform the dingy storage room into something sacred. For those few minutes, Tara wasn't a 42-year-old widow struggling to keep her apartment. She wasn't the woman who'd sacrificed her dreams of singing professionally to marry young and raise a family. She was just a voice, pure and untethered, connecting to something larger than herself. The sudden bang of the storage room door against the wall shattered her reverie. "What the hell do you think you're doing back here?" Richard Goldstein's voice sliced through the final notes of her song. His thin face was pinched with annoyance, eyes narrowed behind wire-rimmed glasses that perpetually slid down his nose. "I'm sorry, Mr. Goldstein. I was just finishing the inventory and—" "You sing too loud," the manager snapped, cutting her off. "This isn't a concert. Pack your things." Tara stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Excuse me? Did I stutter?" Richard's mouth twisted into something resembling a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "This isn't the first time I've had complaints about your performances. Mrs. Willoughby from Cosmetics says she can't concentrate with your caterwauling." "But I only sing in the storage room when no one's around. I didn't think—" "That's right. You didn't think." Richard reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "I've been looking for a reason, Matthews. You're too expensive for what you bring to this store, too old, too distracted." She thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He handed her the dismissal paper like he was giving out trash. "Disrupting the workplace," it said. Her chest tightened. Her hands shook. She opened her mouth to explain, but nothing came out. Because what could she say? That singing was her only joy. That the silence at home was too loud, too cruel, too empty. She managed to collect her meager belongings, a photo of her daughter Lily, a spare cardigan, her lunch container with the half-eaten sandwich she'd been saving for later, all while Richard stood watching, arms crossed, as if she might steal something if left unsupervised. "You'll receive your final paycheck by mail," he said flatly as she passed him, head bowed to hide the tears threatening to spill. "Don't bother asking for a reference." Tara walked out the back door. It was raining, a cold April downpour that matched her mood perfectly. She hadn't brought an umbrella. Her bus pass had exactly 3 rides left on it, and she'd been counting on Friday's paycheck to replenish it. "Lord," she whispered, water streaming down her face, mingling with tears she could no longer contain. "Why is my voice only noticed when it's a problem?" The bus ride home was a blur. Faces swam past her, commuters heading home, students with backpacks. An elderly man with kind eyes who offered her a tissue when he noticed her red-rimmed eyes. She thanked him absently, clutching her purse with white knuckles, mind racing with calculations. 2 months behind on rent already, Lily's school trip money due next week, the electricity bill with its angry red final notice stamp, and now, no job. Their apartment was in one of those buildings that had once been grand, but had long since surrendered to decay. The elevator worked only sporadically, and today, of course, It was out of service. Tara climbed the 4 flights of stairs, each step heavier than the last. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Her niece Kelly had picked up Lily from school as arranged and left a note saying they'd gone to the library for Lily's research project. A small mercy. Tara couldn't bear the thought of explaining to her daughter why she'd come home early, why her eyes were swollen from crying. She shed her wet clothes and pulled on an old flannel shirt that had belonged to David. 5 years since the accident, and still his scent seemed to linger in the fabric, though logic told her that was impossible. She pressed the collar to her nose anyway, desperate for some echo of him. At home, she curled up beside a blanket too thin for the cold. When she heard Kelly and Lily returning, she quickly dried her eyes and plastered on a smile that felt like it might crack her face. "Mom!" Lily's voice was sunshine in human form. "We found the perfect books for my science project. Did you know that some octopuses can change color when they sleep? They have dreams, just like people." Tara gathered her daughter into her arms, breathing in the scent of library books and the strawberry shampoo she used. Lily was 11, all gangly limbs and boundless enthusiasm, with David's eyes and Tara's unruly auburn hair. "That's amazing." "Sweetheart," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Why don't you tell me all about it over dinner? I think we still have some pasta left." Kelly, perceptive as always, raised an eyebrow at Tara over Lily's head. At 19, her niece was already more responsible than many adults Tara knew. She'd stepped in to help with Lily after David's death, and Tara didn't know how she would have survived those first devastating months without her. "Everything okay, Auntie?" Kelly asked quietly, once Lily had bounced off to arrange her library books on the kitchen table. Tara hesitated, then shook her head slightly. "Lost my job. Today," she whispered, the words burning her throat. "I'll tell you later." Kelly's eyes widened, but she simply squeezed Tara's arm and nodded. "I'll stay for dinner. We'll figure it out." Dinner was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Tara laughing at Lily's school stories, asking interested questions about octopus, dreams, even managing to eat a few bites of the pasta that tasted like cardboard in her mouth. All while her mind screamed with panic about the future. After Lily went to bed, Tara collapsed at the kitchen table, the weight of the day finally, crushing what remained of her composure. "He fired me for singing," she told Kelly, the absurdity of it hitting her anew. "Can you believe that, for singing? In the storage room? That's ridiculous." Kelly's indignation was both comforting and useless. "You have the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. Ever since I was little, I loved it when you sang at family gatherings." Tara smiled weakly. "Well, apparently Richard Goldstein doesn't share your appreciation. Said I was disrupting the workplace." "You could fight this. Contact the labor board or something." "With what money for a lawyer? Besides, New York is an at-will employment state. He doesn't need a good reason to fire me." Tara rubbed her temples where a headache was building. "I just need to find another job, fast." "What about singing professionally? You used to do that, right? Before Lily?" Tara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That was a lifetime. I'll go, Kelly. I sang backup for a few local bands, did some jingles for commercials. I was never going to be a star. But you could try again. There are those open mic nights at the Blue Note. Or you could do wedding gigs, or—" "Stop." Tara held up a hand. "I'm a 42-year-old woman with a middle school education and a dependent child. I need stability, not pipe dreams." Kelly looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. "Okay. So we look for another retail job. I can help with Lily more if you need to work different hours." "Thank you," Tara said, reaching across the table to squeeze her niece's hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Later, after Kelly had gone home, Tara sat at the kitchen table with a notepad, making lists of places to apply, calculating how long they could survive on her meager savings, wondering if she could sell anything else of value. The gold locket from her mother was the only thing left that might fetch a decent price. Finally, exhausted and no closer to a solution, she went to check on Lily. Her daughter slept peacefully, one arm flung dramatically above her head, mouth slightly open. Tara gently brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "I'll figure this out," she promised in a whisper. Somehow. She went to bed with swollen eyes and a song stuck in her throat. The next morning dawned grey and unwelcoming. Tara forced herself out of bed before her alarm, determined to start job hunting immediately. She put on her most professional-looking outfit, a navy skirt suit she'd found at a thrift store 3 years ago, and carefully applied makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. "You're going to work early?" Lily asked, looking up from her cereal with surprise. "Not exactly, sweetheart." Tara took a deep breath. "I actually need to tell you something. Mr. Goldstein, well, the store had to make some changes, and they don't need as many employees anymore." "You got fired?" Lily's directness was sometimes startling. "They had to let some people go," Tara hedged. "But don't worry, I'm going to find something else right away. That's why I'm dressed up. I'm going to talk to some other stores today." Lily studied her with those knowing eyes that seemed too old for her young face. "Is that why you were crying last night?" Tara felt her carefully constructed composure crack. "You heard that?" Lily nodded. "It's okay, Mom. We'll be okay. I can sell my rock collection." The lump in Tara's throat grew painful. "That's very sweet of you, but we don't need to sell your rocks. I promise I'll handle this." After dropping Lily at school, Tara spent the day going from store to store with printed resumes. Most places directed her to apply online, but a few mom-and-pop businesses took her information with promises to call if anything opened up. By afternoon, her feet were aching in her rarely worn dress shoes, and her spirit was sinking with each polite rejection. On the subway ride home, the exhaustion of the past 2 days caught up with her. The car was crowded with afternoon commuters, but she managed to find a seat next to an elderly woman who smiled kindly at her. The rhythmic motion of the train was hypnotic, and without realizing it, Tara began to hum softly. It was an old habit. Music had always been her response to stress, to joy, to every emotion in between. The melody that emerged was one her mother used to sing, a gentle folk tune about rivers and mountains and coming home. Lost in the music and her thoughts, she didn't notice at first when the woman beside her touched her arm. "You have a lovely voice, dear," the woman said, her eyes crinkled with genuine appreciation. "Oh," Tara flushed. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was—" "Don't apologize," the woman interrupted. "It's rare to hear something so beautiful on the subway. Usually it's just announcements and arguments." Tara smiled awkwardly, unaccustomed to compliments. "Thank you. Were you professionally trained?" "No, not really. I've always loved to sing." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you shouldn't hide that gift. The world needs more beauty in it." Before Tara could respond, the train pulled into her stop. She said goodbye to the woman and hurried off, the brief exchange already fading from her mind, as she mentally calculated how many resumes she'd handed out and how many more she needed to distribute tomorrow. The next day passed much like the first. More applications, more polite rejections, more growing panic as she watched her savings dwindle with each meal, each subway fare. By evening, Tara was fighting despair. She'd applied to every store within reasonable commuting distance and had exactly 0 prospects to show for it. Lily was at a friend's house for dinner, giving Tara a rare moment alone. She sat at the kitchen window watching the city lights come on, absently stroking the small gold locket that held a picture of David and a tiny curl of Lily's baby hair. Tomorrow, she decided, she would take it to the pawn shop. It might buy them another week's groceries at least. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Kelly. "Aunt T, have you seen it?" Her niece's voice was breathless with excitement. "Seen what?" "The article, in the Manhattan Observer, about the subway songbird." "Kelly, I have no idea what you're talking about. Hold on, I'm sending you the link right now." Tara's phone pinged with a text message. She clicked on it, opening a digital version of the city's most widely read newspaper. 3 days after being fired, her name was in the newspaper. A journalist had written about a voice he heard in a subway. "The most angelic voice I've ever heard," he wrote. It made the whole carriage fall silent. He didn't know her name, but the article went viral. "Find this woman," he wrote. "The world needs to hear her." Tara stared at the screen in disbelief. The article described a woman with auburn hair singing softly on the downtown 6 train yesterday afternoon. The writer, A music columnist named Marcus Chen described being stopped in his tracks by a voice of such pure, unaffected beauty that it seemed to transform the grimy subway car into a cathedral. "I've heard professionals who couldn't touch what this woman did with a simple folk song," the article continued. "There was such authentic emotion in her performance, though I hesitate to call it a performance, as she seemed unaware of her audience, lost in her own private communion with the music." "Kelly," Tara said slowly, "this can't be about me." "It absolutely is. The time, the train line, the description, it's you, Aunt T. The article's gone viral. People are sharing it everywhere, trying to identify the subway songbird. There's even a hashtag." Tara's mind raced. Yesterday on the train she'd been humming, yes, but she hadn't thought anyone besides the elderly woman had noticed. Had she actually been singing out loud? Had other passengers been listening? "This is insane," she muttered. "It's amazing," Kelly corrected. "This could be your big break. You have to contact the journalist. Don't be ridiculous. I need a job, not whatever this is." "But Aunt T, no buts. This is just some weird coincidence. I need to focus on finding work." But even as she dismissed Kelly's excitement, something fluttered in Tara's chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in years. Hope, maybe. Or perhaps just the recognition that her voice, the same voice that had cost her a job, had moved someone enough to write about it. She read the article again, trying to see herself through this stranger's eyes. Could her voice really be special? David had always said so, but she'd assumed he was biased by love. Her mother had encouraged her singing when she was young, but practical concerns had always pushed music to the sidelines of her life. Her niece called, sobbing with joy. "It's you! He's talking about you!" Tara's phone buzzed again. Kelly had shared the article on every social media platform she could access, tagging Tara and adding her own caption. "This is my aunt, the most beautiful voice you'll ever hear." Kelly, why would you do that? Because you deserve to be recognized. Because singing makes you happy. Because you've spent the last 5 years putting everyone else first, and maybe, just maybe, this is the universe telling you it's your turn. If Kelly was expecting gratitude, she was disappointed. Tara spent the next 20 minutes alternately berating her niece for the unwanted attention and frantically trying to figure out how to remove the tags. By the time Lily came home from her friend's house, Tara had a pounding headache and a growing sense of dread. "Mom, are you famous now?" were Lily's first words as she bounded through the door. "Jenny's mom saw Kelly's post and showed us the article. She says you're going to be on TV." "Nobody's going to be on TV," Tara said firmly. "This is all a big misunderstanding that will blow over by tomorrow." But it didn't blow over. The next morning, Tara woke to dozens of notifications on her rarely used social media accounts. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years were sharing the article, adding their own memories of hearing her sing at school events or family gatherings. A local radio station had picked up the story and was asking listeners if they knew the identity of the subway songbird. "This is a nightmare," Tara groaned, burying her face in her pillow. "Mom, there are people outside," Lily called from the living room, where she was peeking through the curtains. Tara stumbled out of bed and joined her daughter at the window. Sure enough, a small group of people were gathered on the sidewalk in front of their building. She recognized a van from one of the local TV stations. "How did they find our address?" she whispered, horrified. Even as she asked, she knew the answer. Their building super, Mr. Ramirez, was notoriously loose-lipped and loved any chance at vicarious fame. If the media had started asking around the neighborhood about a woman matching her description, he would have directed them straight to apartment 4C. "What are we going to do?" Lily asked, eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and concern. Before Tara could answer, her phone rang again. Unknown number. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Is this Tara Matthews?" a man's voice asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marcus Chen. I wrote the article about the woman singing on the subway. Your niece contacted me through social media and—" "Oh, God." Tara sat down heavily on the couch. "Miss Matthews, I'd like to talk to you. Your niece says you're currently between jobs, and I think there are some people who would be very interested in meeting you." Tara's first instinct was to hang up, to hide until this bizarre situation blew over. But then she looked at Lily's hopeful face at the past due bills stacked on the coffee table, at the pawn shop receipt from this morning where she'd traded her mother's locket for barely enough money to cover next week's groceries. "I'm listening," she said finally. If Kelly's viral posting had been the match, Marcus Chen's follow-up article was the gasoline. By that evening, the story of the recently fired single mother with the angelic voice had spread far beyond New York City. Local news covered it, then national outlets picked it up. The human interest angle was irresistible. The struggling widow fired for her gift, unwittingly discovered by a music critic on public transportation. TV crews showed up. Radio stations called. "This is insane," Tara kept saying to anyone who would listen. "I'm not special, I just sing." But the universe seemed determined to prove her wrong. 3 days after the original article, Tara sat nervously in the green room of a morning television show, about to go live for her first ever TV interview. Kelly had helped her pick out an outfit, a simple emerald green dress that brought out the auburn highlights in her hair, and a neighbor who used to work as a makeup artist had volunteered to do her face. "Just be yourself," Marcus advised. The journalist had taken on an unofficial role as her makeshift media handler, helping her navigate the sudden attention. "And remember, you don't have to sing if you don't want to. They'll ask, but you can decline." Tara nodded, though they both knew she would sing. Despite her nerves, despite her disbelief at the situation, something long dormant had awakened in her over the past few days. The joy of music, not just as a private comfort, but as something to be shared. The interview itself passed in a blur. The hosts were kind, the questions predictable. Yes, she'd always loved singing. No, she'd never pursued it professionally. After her early 20s. Yes, it was shocking to be fired for singing. No, she hadn't expected any of this attention. And then came the moment they'd all been waiting for. The female host smiled encouragingly at Tara. "Would you honor us with a song?" she asked. "Something that means something to you." Tara nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. The lights seemed too bright, the camera too close. But then she closed. Her eyes and thought of David, of Lily, of all the years she'd sung only for herself in forgotten corners and empty rooms. She chose Bridge Over Troubled Water, the song she and David had danced to at their wedding, the song she'd hummed to Lily as a colicky infant, the song that had carried her through the darkest days after the accident. The first notes emerged softly, tentatively. But by the chorus her voice had found its strength, filling the studio with a crystalline clarity that silenced even the busy production crew. There was no artifice in her performance, no practiced runs or stylized affectations, just pure emotion, channeled through a naturally gifted instrument. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence before the studio erupted in applause. The female host was wiping away tears. The male host, usually known for his professional detachment, looked stunned. "Well," he said finally, "I think we've all just witnessed something extraordinary." Backstage after the show, Tara was still shaking from the adrenaline when a tall, elegant black woman in a perfectly tailored suit approached her. "Ms. Matthews," the woman said, extending a hand. "My name is Vanessa Washington. I'm with Harmony Records." Tara blinked, certain she had misheard. Harmony was one of the largest independent record labels in the country. "I'd like to talk to you about your future," Vanessa continued, "if you're interested." And then, a music producer knocked on her door. Not literally her apartment door, but close enough. Within a week of her TV appearance, Tara found herself sitting in the sleek offices of Harmony Records, trying to make sense of the contract Vanessa was explaining to her. "We'd start with an EP, 5 or 6 songs, a mix of covers and originals, if you write your own material." "I don't," Tara said automatically, then paused. "Well, I used to, a long time ago." "That's fine. We have excellent songwriters we work with." Vanessa leaned forward. "What makes you special, Ms. Matthews, is your authenticity. Your voice has a quality that can't be manufactured or auto-tuned into existence. You connect with people." "But I'm 42, Tara objected. "I have a child. I have no training, no experience with recording. Age is just a number in this business, regardless of what people think. And as for the rest, That's what we're here for, to give you the support and guidance you need. Vanessa smiled. I'm not saying it will be easy. The hours can be long, there will be a learning curve, but we believe in your talent. You don't know it, Vanessa continued, but I've been searching for this voice for 20 years. Tara stared at the contract, at the advance figure that was more money than she'd ever seen in one place, at the royalty percentages that made her head spin. It seemed impossible. A dream she'd abandoned so long ago that she'd forgotten it was ever hers. Can I think about it? She asked finally. Of course. Take the weekend. Talk to your daughter, your family. Vanessa handed her a card. Call me on Monday with your decision. On the subway ride home, Tara clutched her purse, containing the contract, feeling as if she might wake up at any moment to find this had all been an elaborate dream. A man across from her was watching a video on his phone. She could faintly hear the sound of her own voice singing on the morning show. He looked up, did a double take, and nudged his companion. That's her, he whispered, the subway songbird. Tara ducked her head, still uncomfortable with recognition, but part of her, a small growing part, was beginning to accept that this was really happening. At home, she laid out the contract on the kitchen table and tried to think clearly. The money would solve their immediate problems. They could catch up on rent, pay off the bills, maybe even move to a slightly better apartment. Lily could go on her school trips without Tara having to choose between those fees and groceries, but the implications terrified her. What if she failed? What if people realized she wasn't special after all? What if she signed the contract only to discover she couldn't handle the pressure, the scrutiny, the complete upheaval of the quiet life she'd built? Kelly and Lily had no such doubts. You have to do this, Mom, Lily exclaimed when Tara showed her the contract. This is like in the movies when the fairy godmother comes. It's not quite that simple, sweetheart. But you love singing, and they want to pay you to sing. How is that not perfect? Out of the mouths of babes, Tara thought. Auntie, Kelly said more soberly after Lily had gone to bed, I know this is overwhelming, but think about what David would say. Tara's chest tightened at the mention of her late husband. He'd tell me to go for it, she admitted quietly. He always believed in my voice more than I did. Exactly. Kelly squeezed her hand. Maybe this isn't just random chance. Maybe this is David, orchestrating one final miracle for you from wherever he is. Tara laughed through sudden tears. That sounds like him. Always had to have the last word. The weekend passed in a blur of discussion, prayer, and soul-searching. By Sunday night, Tara had made her decision. She called Vanessa first thing. Monday morning. I'll do it, she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. I want to sign the contract. Excellent, Vanessa replied, and Tara could hear the genuine pleasure in her tone. Can you come to the studio tomorrow morning? There's someone I'd like you to meet. The producer I think would be perfect for your project. The next day, Tara entered the recording studio feeling like an imposter. The space was intimidating. Soundproofed walls, enormous mixing board with hundreds of buttons and sliders, instruments arranged carefully around the room. She clutched her coffee cup like a lifeline. Vanessa greeted her with a warm smile and introduced her to a casually dressed man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind chunky black-framed glasses. Tara Matthews, this is Leon Barrett. He'll be producing your EP. Tara nearly dropped her coffee. Leon Barrett was a legend in the music industry, a Grammy-winning producer who had worked with some of the biggest names in soul, R&B, and folk music over the past 3 decades. It's an honor to meet you, she stammered. I've admired your work for years. The honor is mine, Leon replied. I heard your performance on that morning show and knew immediately I wanted to work with you. Your voice has what we call in the business that thing, something that makes people stop whatever they're doing and listen. You don't think I'm too old for this? Tara couldn't help asking. Leon's laugh was warm and genuine. Music isn't about age, Miss Matthews. It's about truth, and your voice tells the truth with every note. Over the next few weeks, Tara experienced a crash course in the music industry. Days were spent in the studio, working with Leon to select songs, experiment with arrangements, and record take after take until they captured exactly the sound they wanted. Evenings were devoted to Lily, helping with homework and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy in their rapidly changing lives. The advance from Harmony allowed Tara to pay off their debts and move to a slightly larger apartment in a safer neighborhood. Lily transferred to a school with a strong music program, thriving in the new environment. Kelly helped with childcare when Tara's schedule became hectic, relieved that her aunt had finally found her path. "You sing like you've lived every word," Leon told Tara one day after a particularly emotional recording session. "That's rare. Most artists perform, but you inhabit the songs. It's why people connect with you." "I'm just telling my story," Tara said simply. "Exactly, and it's a story worth hearing." As the EP took shape, so did Tara's confidence. The woman who had once been afraid to sing outside her storage room sanctuary now embraced the studio microphone like an old friend. Notes that had once been tentative soared with newfound assurance. Songs that had been private comforts became shared experiences. If the recording process was transformative, the first live performance was revolutionary. "We need to introduce you to an audience," Vanessa explained. "Just a small showcase ahead of the EP release. Key industry people, some media, maybe 100 guests total." The venue was an intimate jazz club in Greenwich Village, all exposed. Brick and warm lighting, with a small stage and a baby grand piano. Tara stood backstage, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. "I can't do this," she whispered to Leon, who had come to offer moral support. "What was I thinking? I'm not a performer." "You've been performing your whole life," he corrected gently. "Every time you sang to your daughter, every time you lost yourself in music in that storage room, every time you let your voice speak when words failed you. The only difference now is that more people get to witness it." Tara closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing the way Leon had taught her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. She thought of David, of how proud he would be to see her on this stage, of Lily sitting in the front row with Kelly, practically vibrating with excitement for her mother. "Ladies and gentlemen," the club owner announced, "Harmony Records is proud to present for the first time on our stage, Tara Matthews." She walked out slowly, the spotlight momentarily blinding her. The pianist began the introduction to the first song, a soulful rendition of Amazing Grace that Leon had reimagined with jazz influences, bringing the song full circle from the moment in the storage room that had cost her her job. For a terrifying second, no sound emerged when Tara opened her mouth, but then she caught sight of Lily's beaming face in the front row, and something clicked into place. She sang once, twice, cried. The first verse emerged softly, almost a whisper. By the second, her voice had found its strength. By the bridge, the entire room was silent, captivated. She closed her eyes and let the music carry her, let the years of joy and grief and struggle and love pour through every note. When the final note faded, there was a beat of perfect silence. Then the room erupted. Months later, she stood under bright lights, trembling. The audience waited. It was the release concert for her EP, Storage Room Hymns, 6 songs that traced her journey from grief to rediscovery. The venue was sold out, filled with fans who had followed her story since that first viral article. In the front row sat Lily, Kelly, Marcus Chen, and even the elderly woman from the subway who had been the first to acknowledge her gift publicly. As Tara took her position at the microphone, she felt none of the paralyzing fear that had gripped her at the showcase. Instead, there was a sense of homecoming, of stepping into a role she had been preparing for her entire life without realizing. Thus, she opened her mouth, and this time no one shut her up. They rose, they cried, they remembered. The woman who was fired for singing in the shadows was now the voice the world had been waiting for. After the concert, backstage was chaos. Well-wishers, industry executives, journalists all clamoring for a moment of her time. But Tara had eyes only for Lily, who launched herself into her mother's arms. "You were amazing, Mom. Everyone was crying. Even that tough-looking guy with all the tattoos." Tara laughed, holding her daughter close. "Well, if we moved that tough guy, then I guess I did something right." Leon appeared through the crowd, his face shining with pride. "That was magnificent, Tara. Absolutely magnificent. You've arrived." "Thank you," she said. the words inadequate for the gratitude she felt, for believing in me, for all of this. "I just helped polish what was already there," he replied. "The gift was always yours." As the crowd dispersed and the backstage area quieted, Tara found herself standing alone for a moment. She thought of that rainy day outside the pharmacy, of her desperate prayer. "Lord, why is my voice only noticed when it's a problem?" The answer, it seemed, had come in the most unexpected way. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. 1 year after her discovery, Tara's life bore little resemblance to the desperate existence she had once known. Storage Room Hymns had climbed the charts with unexpected speed, resonating with listeners who found in her voice a raw authenticity often missing from overproduced pop offerings. Her full-length album, Widow's Walk, had followed 6 months later, earning critical acclaim and a devoted following that crossed generational lines. The modest advance that had once seemed like a fortune had been eclipsed by royalty checks that allowed Tara to purchase a small brownstone in Brooklyn, a home with enough space for Lily to have her own room decorated exactly as she wanted, with a spare bedroom for Kelly whenever she needed it, and even a small home studio where Tara could record vocal ideas at any hour inspiration struck. On this particular morning, Tara sat at her kitchen table nursing a cup of herbal tea. Her vocal coach had banned coffee before performances, and reviewing the itinerary for her upcoming tour. 30 cities in 60 days, her first major tour. As a headliner, the very thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. "You're doing that thing again," Kelly observed, sliding into the chair across from her. Her niece, now 20, had deferred college for a year to serve as Tara's personal assistant, a role that involved everything from scheduling to emotional support. What thing? That thing where you look at your blessings like they're about to be taken away. Kelly reached across the table and squeezed her aunt's hand. "That's real, Aunt T, all of it. You earned this." Tara smiled weakly. "I know, it's just, sometimes I wake up and expect to find myself back in that storage room, counting expired labels." "Well, unless your bedroom has magically transformed into a windowless pharmacy closet, I think you're safe." Kelly's teasing tone softened. "You know what Uncle David would say, right?" "I told you so," they said in unison, and then both laughed. David had always believed in her talent, with an unshakable faith that had sometimes irritated Tara. In their early days, before Lily, he had dragged her to open mic nights, arranged auditions she was too shy to seek out herself, recorded her, singing in their tiny apartment, and sent the tapes to producers who never responded. His death had silenced not just his voice but her ambitions, until that fateful day in the storage room had set her on a new path. "Mom, have you seen my blue sneakers?" Lily called, clattering down the stairs with the boundless energy of a 12-year-old. "I need them for PE today." "Check the hall closet," Tara replied, smiling as her daughter skidded into the kitchen on sock-clad feet. "And don't forget your lunch is in the fridge." Watching Lily grab her belongings with the chaotic efficiency of youth, Tara marveled at how well her daughter had adapted to their new circumstances. There had been an adjustment period, certainly. The first time fans had recognized Tara at Lily's school event had been awkward for everyone, but overall, Lily seemed to take her mother's sudden fame in stride. "Are you nervous about tonight?" Lily asked, pausing in her morning whirlwind to study Tara's face. Tonight was the first night of the tour, kicking off at Madison Square Garden, a venue that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "A little," Tara admitted. "It's a big place." "You'll fill it with your voice," Lily said with such matter-of-fact confidence that Tara felt her anxiety recede slightly. "Just like you used to fill our old apartment when you thought I was asleep." Tara raised an eyebrow. "You heard that?" "Mom, everyone heard you. That's why we're here." Lily grinned, grabbed her lunch from the refrigerator, and kissed her mother's cheek. "Gotta go. Kelly's driving me today, right?" "Right," Kelly confirmed. "Let's move, kiddo. Traffic's gonna be brutal." As they headed for the door, Lily turned back. "Mom, don't forget you promised to help me with my science project when you get back from tour." "I wouldn't miss it," Tara promised. We'll build the best model volcano Brooklyn has ever seen." After they left, Tara found herself alone in the quiet house. She wandered from room to room, still not quite believing this was her life now. The spacious living room with its comfortable furniture, and the vintage record player she'd splurged on. The kitchen with actual counter space and appliances that all worked at the same time. Lily's bedroom with its science posters and the telescope. They'd bought to nurture her growing interest in astronomy. And then there was her music room, a converted bedroom with acoustic panels on the walls, a keyboard, a guitar she was slowly learning to play, and a small recording setup that Leon had helped her select. This room, more than any other in the house, represented the transformation of her life. Tara sat at the keyboard and absently played a few chords, her mind drifting to the evening ahead. Madison Square Garden, 20,000 seats. Her name on the marquee. How had this happened? Her phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Car picking you up at 2 p.m. for soundcheck. Wear something comfortable. Glam team arriving at venue by 5. The practical details grounded her, giving her something concrete to focus on, rather than the abstract terror of performing for such a massive crowd. She responded with a quick acknowledgement, and then pulled up her set list for the night, determined to run through it once more before leaving. The first song would be Storage Room Hymns, the title track from her EP that had started it all. It seemed fitting to begin where her journey had begun, with the song that spoke most directly to her former life, and the gift that had both cost her a job and saved her from despair. As her fingers found the melody, Tara allowed herself to remember the cold fluorescent lights of that windowless room, the smell of cardboard and cleaning products, the way her voice had bounced off the metal shelving. The song had been born in that space, a simple, haunting tune about finding beauty in forgotten places, about a voice that refused to be silenced. Richard Goldstein had fired her for that voice. In a strange way, she owed him a debt of gratitude. Without that dismissal, she might never have been on that subway, might never have caught the attention of Marcus Chen, might still be counting inventory and struggling to make rent. The irony wasn't lost on her. The door chime interrupted her thoughts. Tara checked her watch too early for her car service. Who could be visiting at this hour? When she opened the door, she found Marcus Chen standing on her front steps, looking slightly uncomfortable in the chilly autumn air. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" The journalist smiled sheepishly. "I was in the neighborhood working on a story, and I thought I'd stop by to wish you luck tonight. I know it's a big moment." Tara stepped back, gesturing him inside. "Come in. I was just going over my set list." Marcus followed her into the living room, his eyes taking in the space appreciatively. "Nice place. Very you." "Is it?" Tara laughed. "I'm still figuring out what me looks like these days." "Well, from what I can see, you looks pretty good." Marcus had been a constant presence throughout her rise to fame, first as the journalist who'd discovered her, then as a friend and occasional advisor as she navigated the unfamiliar terrain of the music industry. His initial article had expanded into a feature-length profile that had brought even more attention to her story, and Tara was grateful for the thoughtful way he'd portrayed her journey. "Would you like some tea?" she offered. "No coffee for the vocal cords on performance day," he teased. "Beatrice would kill me," Tara confirmed, referring to her vocal coach. "Tea it is." As they settled in the kitchen with steaming mugs, Marcus studied her face. "You're nervous." "Terrified," she admitted. "Madison Square Garden, Marcus. What if I freeze? What if my voice cracks? What if they all realize I'm just a middle-aged widow who got lucky?" "First of all, 43 isn't middle-aged anymore," Marcus corrected. "And secondly, luck had nothing to do with it. Your voice is a gift. Your story resonates with people because it's real. But the pressure is real too," he acknowledged. "But remember what you told me during our first interview, that when you sing, you feel closest to who you really are. Hold on to that tonight. Sing for yourself first, just like you did in that storage room. The audience will follow." Tara nodded, his words easing something tight in her chest. "When did you get so wise about performing?" "I listen to artists for a living," he reminded her. "After a while you pick up on patterns, what makes the great ones great, what trips up the almost greats. And which am I? That's entirely up to you." Marcus checked his watch and stood. I should go. You need to prepare, and I have a deadline. At the door, he paused. I'll be there tonight, you know. 7th row, aisle seat. If you get nervous, just look for me. I'll be the one looking smugly satisfied about discovering you before anyone else did. Tara laughed and impulsively hugged him. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. After he left, Tara returned to her music room with renewed focus. Marcus was right. The key was to find that place within herself where the music lived, the same place she had accessed in the storage room when she thought no one was listening. The hours before a show always passed with strange elasticity, sometimes crawling, sometimes flying. Before she knew it, the doorbell was ringing again, this time announcing her car service. Tara gathered her performance bag, containing her in-ear monitors, the honey lemon lozenges Beatrice insisted on, a change of clothes, and the small silver locket she'd been able to buy back from the pawn shop with her first royalty check. The key. Drive to Madison Square Garden passed in a blur of pre-performance meditation, as Tara closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, visualizing the performance ahead, just as Beatrice had taught her. By the time they arrived at the venue's back entrance, she felt centered, if not entirely calm. Soundcheck was a well-orchestrated dance of technicians, musicians, and Tara herself, testing microphones, adjusting monitor levels, running through portions of songs to ensure the acoustics were properly balanced. Her backing band, 5, accomplished. Musicians who had quickly become like family over the past year, moved with practiced efficiency, each making small adjustments to their instruments and positions based on the unique challenges of the space. "How are you feeling, Tara?" asked Ramon, her keyboardist and musical director. His calm presence had been a stabilizing force throughout their rehearsals. "Like I might throw up," she admitted. "But in a good way, I think." Ramon laughed. "That's normal. Even after 20 years, I still get the jitters before a big show. Channel it into the performance. That energy is what makes live music special." By the time soundcheck finished, Tara had barely 2 hours before the doors would open. She retreated to her dressing room, where the glam team Vanessa had arranged was waiting to transform her from nervous performer to confident headliner. "There she is!" exclaimed Paolo, her stylist, who had helped develop her signature look, elegant, but approachable, with touches of vintage glamour that nodded to the soul and folk influences in her music. "Ready to become a star?" "I think that ship has sailed," Tara said wryly, settling into the makeup chair. "Darling, tonight is when you claim your crown," Paolo insisted, unzipping garment bags to reveal her stage outfits. "The album made you famous. The tour makes you immortal." As the makeup artist worked on her face and the hairstylist transformed her auburn locks into soft waves, Tara closed her eyes and let herself be pampered, still an uncomfortable experience for someone who had spent most of her adult life putting everyone else's needs before her own. A knock at the door announced Vanessa's arrival. The record executive entered with her characteristic blend of efficiency and warmth. "How's our headliner doing?" she asked, giving Tara's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Surviving," Tara replied with a small smile. "Is it always this intense?" "First nights are the worst," Vanessa assured her. "After this, you'll find your rhythm. But I have some news that might add to your nerves, so brace yourself." Tara's stomach dropped. "What happened?" 3 major label executives are in the audience tonight, and a casting director from Broadway." Vanessa's expression was serious, but her eyes sparkled. "Word is they're interested in discussing future projects. Very interested." "You're kidding." Tara's voice was barely audible over the sound of the hairdryer. "I never kid about business opportunities," Vanessa replied. "Just do what you always do. Sing your heart out. The rest will take care of itself." As the team finished preparing her, Tara could hear the growing rumble from the arena as fans filed in. 20,000 people, waiting for her. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. A production assistant appeared at the door. 15 minutes to showtime, Ms. Matthews." Tara stood, smoothing the emerald gown Paolo had selected for her opening numbers. "How do I look?" "Like yourself," Vanessa said approvingly. "But better." In the final moments before taking the stage, Tara gathered with her band in the green room. It had become their tradition to form a circle, arms around each other's shoulders, for a moment of shared focus before performing. "Remember why we're here," Ramon said quietly. "We're here to share something beautiful, to create a space where people can feel everything. Joy, grief, hope, longing. Music is the universal language, and tonight we get to speak it together." The others murmured agreement, and Tara felt a surge of gratitude for these people who had become her musical family. They believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. "Ms. Matthews, they're ready for you," the stage manager called. The house lights dimmed, and the crowd's energy shifted from general excitement to focused anticipation. Tara stood in the wings, watching as her band took their positions on the darkened stage. The intro music began, a haunting piano motif that would lead into storage room hymns. This was it. No turning back. Tara took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and then stepped into the light. The roar that greeted her was deafening. 20,000 voices raised in welcome. For a breathless moment she froze, overwhelmed by the sea of faces and the thunder of applause. But then she caught sight of Marcus in the 7th row, just where he said he'd be, giving her an encouraging nod. She approached the microphone, feeling strangely calm now that the moment had arrived. The piano introduction continued, giving her time to connect with the audience, to feel their energy and feed it back to them. And then she began to sing. The story of the storage room, of being silenced, of finding her voice again. It poured out of her with a rawness and power that surprised even her. By the chorus, the audience was completely silent, captivated. By the final verse, she could see people wiping away tears. As the last note faded, there was a beat of perfect silence, and then an explosion of applause that seemed to physically push against her. Tara found herself blinking back tears, overwhelmed by the response. "Thank you," she said, when the noise finally subsided enough for her to be heard. "Thank you for being here, for listening, for making room for an unlikely voice." The concert unfolded like a dream after that, each song flowing into the next, the careful architecture of the set list building emotional momentum that carried both performer and audience through valleys of tender vulnerability and peaks of jubilant celebration. Tara felt something she'd never experienced before, a symbiotic relationship with the crowd, energy flowing back and forth between them in currents almost tangible enough to touch. For the encore, she had planned something special. As the band left the stage, a single spotlight illuminated Tara at the piano. She'd been taking lessons for months, preparing for this moment. "This last song is for my late husband, David," she said softly into the microphone. "He always believed in my voice even when I didn't. He used to say that someday I'd sing in a place like this." She paused, emotion thickening her voice. "I wish he could be here to see that he was right." Her fingers found the opening chords of Bridge Over Troubled Water, the same song she'd sung on that first television appearance, the song that had carried her through the darkest days after David's death. But this time she accompanied herself, her newly acquired piano skills simple but effective. The arena fell completely silent as she sang, 20,000 people holding their collective breath. In that moment, Tara wasn't singing for them. She was singing for David, for the girl she had been, for the woman she had become. When the final note faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including her own. The standing ovation lasted for nearly 5 minutes. Tara stood center stage, hand over her heart, overwhelmed by the moment. This was real. This was her life now. The woman who had once been afraid to sing outside a storage room was now filling Madison Square Garden with her voice, and people were listening. Backstage, the euphoria continued as her team surrounded her with congratulations and embraces. Lily and Kelly rushed into her arms, both talking over each other in their excitement. "Mom, you were amazing." "Aunt T, I've never heard you sing like that before." Tara held them both, dizzy with joy and relief and the lingering adrenaline of performance. Did I really do okay? "Okay." Vanessa appeared, champagne glasses in hand. "You just gave the performance of a lifetime. And those executives I mentioned, they're waiting to meet you right now. The next hour passed in a whirlwind of introductions, congratulations and business cards pressed into her hand with promises of future discussions. Broadway possibilities, film soundtrack opportunities, collaborative projects with artists she'd grown up idolizing. By the time the last well-wisher had departed and the venue began to empty, Tara found herself sitting alone in her dressing room, staring at her reflection in the makeup-smudged mirror. The woman who looked back at her was simultaneously familiar and strange, the same eyes, the same features, but transformed by experience, by confidence, by purpose. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Marcus. "May I?" he asked, hovering in the doorway. Tara nodded, gesturing him in. "Just trying to process all of this." Marcus sat in the chair beside her, studying her face. "How does it feel to have arrived? Is that what this is?" Tara laughed softly. "It feels unreal. Like I'm going to wake up tomorrow back in that apartment, worrying about the electricity bill." "That's not going to happen," Marcus assured her. "What you did tonight, that was real, that was earned." "I keep thinking about what Richard Goldstein would say if he could see me now," Tara admitted. "The man who fired me for singing too loud." Marcus smiled. "Actually, I have something to tell you about that." Tara turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I saw him tonight, in the audience." "You're joking." "Not at all. Remember that feature I did on you last month?" Apparently, his wife read it and recognized the story. She bought tickets and dragged him here tonight. Marcus looked immensely pleased with himself. "I spoke to them briefly after the show. Mrs. Goldstein was gushing about how beautiful your voice is. And Richard, let me guess, still thought I was too loud." Tara's tone was light, but there was an old hurt beneath the words. "Actually, he looked like a man who had made the biggest mistake of his professional life," Marcus said. "He asked if I could arrange for him to speak with you. I told him I'd pass along the message, but the decision was entirely yours." Tara was silent for a moment, absorbing this unexpected development. Richard Goldstein, the man whose casual cruelty had set her on this path, wanted to speak with her. "What would you say to him?" Marcus asked when she didn't respond. "I don't know," Tara admitted. "Part of me wants to thank him, oddly enough. If he hadn't fired me, I might never have been on that subway that day. I might never have been discovered." "And part of you?" "Part of me remembers how it felt, to be dismissed, to be told my voice was worthless, to walk out into the rain, wondering how I'd feed my child." Tara met Marcus's gaze. "That part isn't ready for a reunion." Marcus nodded, understanding. "For what it's worth, I think that's wise. Some chapters are better left closed. Maybe someday," Tara allowed, "but not tonight. Tonight is for celebrating how far I've come, not revisiting where I started." As if on cue, the door burst open again and Lily bounded in, still buzzing with the excitement of the evening. "Mom, the car is waiting, and Kelly says we can get ice cream on the way home if you're not too tired." Tara laughed, the contemplative mood broken by her daughter's infectious enthusiasm. "Ice cream sounds perfect." As they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave, Tara took one last look around the dressing room, at the flowers from well-wishers, at the dress she'd worn on stage now hanging carefully on a rack, at the remnants of a night she would never forget. Whatever the future held, more tours, more albums, perhaps even new artistic ventures, she knew now that her voice had found its purpose, not just in music, but in telling a story of resilience, of second chances, of finding beauty in unexpected places. The woman who had once been silenced was now being heard, and she had no intention of stopping. What challenges await Tara as she navigates her newfound fame? Will her voice continue to reach people in meaningful ways, or will the pressures of the music industry threaten to change her authentic sound? Find out as her journey continues. 6 months after that triumphant night at Madison Square Garden, Tara sat in Leon's private studio, frustration etched on her face as she listened to the playback of her latest recording session. "It's technically perfect," Leon observed, his fingers dancing over the mixing board adjustments. "But something's missing." "I know," Tara agreed, removing her headphones with a sigh. "It doesn't feel real." They had been working on her second full-length album for nearly 2 months, and while the songs were coming together beautifully from a technical standpoint, Tara couldn't shake the feeling that something essential had been lost. The raw emotion that had characterized Widow's Walk seemed elusive now, replaced by a polished perfection that left her cold. "Maybe we've been pushing too hard," Leon suggested, leaning back in his chair. "When was the last time you took a break? Really took a break?" Tara tried to remember. Between the conclusion of her tour, the immediate launch into the new album, the countless interviews and appearances, and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Lily's sake, she hadn't had a moment to simply exist in months. "I can't." "Remember," she admitted. Leon nodded knowingly. "That's your problem right there. You can't pour from an empty cup, Tara. Your first album came from a lifetime of stored-up emotion and experience. This one needs to come from somewhere real too, but you haven't given yourself space to feel anything new. So what are you suggesting? That we just stop?" "I'm suggesting you take a week. No studio, no songwriting, no interviews, just live. Reconnect with whatever inspired you in the first place." Tara's initial instinct was to protest. They had deadlines, expectations, momentum to maintain. But the more she considered Leon's words, the more truth she found in them. She had been so focused on being Tara Matthews, recording artist, that she'd lost touch with just being Tara. "Okay," she said finally. "1 week." Leon smiled. "Go. Remember why you sing in the first place." The next morning, instead of heading to the studio, Tara found herself with an unexpected gift: unstructured time. After dropping Lily at school, she returned home and stood in her kitchen, momentarily at a loss. What did she used to do before music became her profession rather than her refuge? On impulse, she changed into comfortable clothes and walking. Shoes, grabbed her coat, and headed out with no particular destination in mind. The April morning was crisp but sunny, Brooklyn stirring to life around her as she walked, anonymous in casual attire and oversized sunglasses. Her feet carried her to Prospect Park, where the trees were just beginning to bud with the promise of spring. Tara found an empty bench near the lake and sat, watching ducks glide across the water and children play along the shoreline. For the first time in months, she allowed her mind to simply wander, unburdened by deadlines or expectations. Without conscious thought, she began to hum, not one of her recorded songs, not something she was working on for the new album, but a simple, improvised melody inspired by the scene before her. The notes rose and fell like the ripples on the lake, unhurried and natural. A young woman pushing a stroller passed by, then stopped and turned back. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "Are you Tara Matthews?" So much for anonymity, Tara thought, but smiled and nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman continued. "Your song, After the Rain, helped me through postpartum depression last year. I used to play it every morning when things felt overwhelming." Tara felt something shift inside her, a reminder of why music mattered in the first place. Not for the acclaim or the sales figures, but for moments like this, when a song became a lifeline for someone struggling. "That means more to me than you know," she told the woman sincerely. "Thank you for telling me." After the woman continued on her way, Tara remained on the bench, thinking about After the Rain, a song she'd written in the darkest days after. David's death, when getting out of bed each morning, had felt like climbing a mountain. She'd included it on Widow's Walk almost as an afterthought, certain it was too personal, too raw for commercial appeal. Yet here was evidence that its very specificity had made it universal, that her most private pain, transformed into music, had helped a stranger through her own darkness. Perhaps that was what was missing from the new songs, Tara realized. She'd been trying to recreate the success of her first album instead of writing from her current truth. And her current truth was complicated, no longer defined solely by loss and struggle, but by an unexpected journey of rediscovery and success that carried its own challenges and insights. For the remainder of her week off, Tara immersed herself in the simple pleasures she'd been too busy to enjoy. She cooked elaborate meals with Lily, spent an afternoon helping Kelly prepare for final exams, visited her old neighborhood, and reconnected with former neighbors who had supported her through the hardest times. She attended a concert not as a performer but as an audience member, soaking in the magic from the other side of the stage. And she sang not for recording devices or audiences, but for herself, in the shower, while cooking, walking through the park. She let music be play, again rather than work, remembering why she had always turned to song in her most private moments. When she returned to the studio the following Monday, Leon noticed the difference immediately. "There she is," he said with satisfaction, "the real Tara Matthews." That day's recording session produced what would become the title track of her second album, Learning to Fly, a song about the unexpected journey from a storage room to a spotlight, and all the fear, joy, and growth that had accompanied that transformation. "That's it," Leon said when they'd finished the final take. "That's what's been missing. You're not singing about who you were anymore, you're singing about who you are." As production on the album continued, Tara found a new balance, one that honored both her professional commitments and her personal needs. She set boundaries around her time, ensuring that Lily remained her priority and that space remained in her life for the simple joys that fueled her creativity. The resulting album, released 9 months after her Madison Square Garden debut, reflected this evolution. Critics noted its more confident sound, the way it embraced both vulnerability and strength, loss and discovery. "Matthews has found her stride," wrote one reviewer. "No longer defined solely by tragedy, she offers us a vision of what lies beyond. Survival, the complicated, beautiful process of rebuilding a life note by note." But perhaps the most meaningful review came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after the album's release, Tara received a letter, an actual paper letter in an envelope with a stamp, a rarity in the digital age. The return address made her breath catch, Richard Goldstein. For a long moment she simply held the unopened envelope, uncertain whether to read its contents or discard it unopened. The man who had fired her, who had dismissed her gift as disrupting the workplace, now sought to communicate with her. Did she want to hear what he had to say? Curiosity won out. Tara carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. "Dear Miss Matthews," it began formally, "you don't know me, but my husband Richard worked with you at Matthews Pharmacy before his unfortunate decision to terminate your employment. I am writing to you because Richard suffered a stroke 3 months ago. His recovery has been slow but steady, though his speech remains affected. During his rehabilitation, his therapist suggested music as a tool to help retrain his brain and speech patterns. I remembered that article about you, the one that mentioned you used to work for my husband, and purchased your albums. I don't know if it's irony or divine intervention, but the voice he once silenced has become instrumental in helping him find his own voice again. Your songs, with their clear diction and emotional resonance, have become part of his daily therapy. His doctors have been amazed at his progress. Richard cannot yet right himself, but he asked me to convey both his apology for his past actions and his gratitude for the unexpected role you are playing in his recovery. If you're ever in Boston, we would be honored to thank you in person. With respect and appreciation, Margaret Goldstein. Tara read the letter twice, tears blurring her vision. Of all the ways she had imagined her music might touch lives, helping, the man who had fired her recover from a stroke had never crossed her mind. She thought about the storage room where it had all begun, about the rain that had soaked her clothes as she walked out of the pharmacy that day, about the desperate prayer she had offered. "Lord, why is my voice only noticed when it's a problem?" Perhaps this was the final answer to that prayer, a reminder that every voice, even those once silenced, had purpose, that healing could flow in unexpected directions, that music could bridge chasms created by hurt and misunderstanding. Tara picked up her phone and dialed Vanessa's number. "I need to add a stop to the promotional tour," she said when her manager answered. "Boston." "Boston wasn't on our radar," Vanessa replied, confusion evident in her voice. "The market data suggests we focus on—" "This isn't about market data," Tara interrupted gently. "It's about something more important. Trust me on this one, Vanessa." After explaining the situation, Tara was met with a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Well," Vanessa said finally, "I've always said your story is what makes you special. Looks like you're about to add another remarkable chapter." 2 weeks later, Tara stood in a rehabilitation center in Boston, watching as a frail Richard Goldstein, supported by a walker and his wife, made his way slowly toward her. His left side showed the telltale droop of stroke damage, and when he spoke, his words came with careful deliberation, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Ms. Matthews," he managed, extending his right hand. "Thank you for coming." Tara took his hand, surprised by the wave of emotion that washed over her. The man before her bore little resemblance to the stern manager who had handed her dismissal papers with such cold efficiency. Illness had humbled him, had stripped away the arrogance and judgment she remembered. "Please call me Tara," she said. For the next hour they talked, or rather Margaret talked, while Richard contributed when he could. His speech therapy exercises evident in the careful way he formed each word. They told her about hearing her on the radio for the first time, and realizing with shock that the famous subway songbird was the same woman Richard had fired. About how music therapy had been suggested after traditional speech therapy plateaued. About the first time Richard had successfully sung along with storage room hymns, managing full sentences in song that still eluded him in speech. "The irony," Richard said carefully, "is not lost on me." "Life has a way of coming full circle," Tara agreed. "I never would have imagined we'd be sitting here like this." "I was wrong," Richard said with visible effort. "Your voice wasn't a problem, it was a gift." "A gift we're profoundly grateful for now," Margaret added, squeezing her husband's hand. "The doctors say singing activates different neural pathways than speaking. When he sings along with your songs, he can form complete sentences without struggling." Tara felt a lump forming in her throat. "May I ask which songs help the most?" "After the Rain," Richard replied, the title coming more easily than his previous words, and Storage Room Hymns. The irony was almost too perfect. The very songs born from her greatest struggles were now helping the man who had contributed to those struggles. Tara couldn't have scripted a more poetic resolution if she'd tried. "Would you sing something?" Margaret asked hesitantly. "The therapists say hearing music live can be especially beneficial. Of course, we understand if that's asking too much." Tara glanced around the rehabilitation center's common room, where other patients were engaged in various activities. A small upright piano stood in the corner, apparently used for music therapy sessions. "I'd be honored," she said softly. As she made her way to the piano, a few heads turned in recognition. One of the therapists whispered something to a colleague, eyes wide with surprise. But Tara's focus remained on Richard, on the man whose thoughtless action had inadvertently set her on the path to rediscovering her voice. She sat at the piano and placed her fingers on the keys, letting the opening notes of Storage Room Hymns fill the room. The song began softly, just as her humming had begun in that windowless space years ago, tentative at first, then gaining strength with each measure. By the chorus, several patients had gathered around the piano. By the second verse, Richard was quietly singing along, his damaged speech finding fluidity in melody that it couldn't yet achieve in conversation. The effort was visible on his face, but so was the joy, the simple, profound joy of reclaiming something lost. When she finished, the small audience applauded, but Tara only saw Richard's face, the tears tracking down his cheeks, the gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you," he said clearly, the words coming easier than before. In that moment, Tara understood something essential about her journey. Her voice had never been meant to stay hidden in a storage room, but neither had it been meant solely for spotlights and standing ovations. Its true purpose was connection, bridging gaps between strangers, providing comfort in dark times, celebrating joy in bright ones. The rest of the promotional tour passed in a whirlwind of performances, interviews and meet and greets. But that afternoon in Boston remained fixed in Tara's mind as a touchstone, a reminder of why music mattered beyond album sales and critical acclaim. Have you ever had an experience where something that once hurt you became a source of healing for someone else? Or perhaps a moment when you realized your struggles had given you gifts you couldn't have imagined? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. "Mom, do you ever miss it?" Lily asked one evening, as they sat on the rooftop garden of their brownstone, watching the sunset paint Brooklyn in shades of gold and pink. "Miss what, sweetheart?" Tara was distracted, mentally, reviewing the schedule for tomorrow's studio session. The third album was taking shape, a more collaborative effort that pushed her in new musical directions. The storage room, our old apartment, before all of this. Lily gestured vaguely at their surroundings, the comfortable home, the evidence of their transformed circumstances. Tara considered the question, surprised by its depth. At 14, Lily was no longer the child who had offered to sell her rock collection to help with bills, but a thoughtful teenager navigating her own complicated relationship with her mother's fame. Sometimes, Tara admitted, not the struggle or the fear, but the simplicity, yes, the way music was, just for us, just for comfort. Lily nodded, her expression serious beyond her years. "That's what I thought. You seem, I don't know, busier, more distracted, like the music isn't just yours anymore." The observation struck Tara with unexpected force. When had her perceptive daughter noticed what Tara herself had been reluctant to acknowledge? That success, for all its blessings, had changed her relationship with music in ways both subtle and profound. "You're right," she said finally. "It's different now. I love what I do. I'm grateful every day for the opportunity. But sometimes I miss just singing because I need to, not because there's an album to finish or a tour to prepare for." "Then why don't you?" Lily challenged. "Just sing right now, not for an album or an audience, just for you." Tara laughed softly. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise," Lily replied with a grin. "You were just too busy worrying about paying the electric bill to notice." The casual reference to their former struggles might have been painful once, but now it was just part of their shared history, a reminder of how far they'd come, of what they'd survived together. Tara closed her eyes and let a melody rise naturally, not one of her recorded songs, not something from the new album in progress, but a simple tune that emerged from the present moment. The sunset, her daughter beside her, the distant sounds of the city, the weight of memory and the lightness of gratitude. When she opened her eyes, Lily was watching her with a smile of recognition. "That's it," she said. "That's the mom I remember." The observation stayed with Tara through the following weeks, prompting a gentle but significant course correction. She began to carve out more time for music that was just for herself. No recording devices, no audiences, no commercial considerations. She started a personal journal again, something she'd abandoned in the whirlwind of success, filling it with thoughts and lyrics that might never be shared beyond its pages. And she made a decision about the direction of her career, one that surprised Vanessa, but felt inexplicably right. "I want to do a small venue tour," she announced during their quarterly planning meeting. "Intimate spaces, just me and a piano, maybe one or two other musicians. No production, no spectacle." Vanessa frowned, tapping her pen against her notepad. "Your last arena tour sold out in hours, Tara. We could easily book larger venues for the next one." "I know we could, but this isn't about what we could do. It's about what we should do." Tara leaned forward, trying to articulate the feeling that had been growing within her. "I started in small spaces, singing to myself in a storage room, being heard by strangers on a subway. I want to recapture some of that intimacy, that directness." "From a business perspective," Vanessa began. "From a soul perspective," Tara interrupted gently. "I need this. The music needs this." Vanessa studied her face, then nodded slowly. "All right. Small venues it is, but we'll price the tickets higher to compensate for the limited seating." "Actually, I have another idea about that too," Tara said with a small smile. "I want to do something different with the ticket sales." The Back to Basics tour, as it came to be called, featured Tara in venues holding no more than 1,000 people. Historic theaters, converted churches, intimate clubs with rich acoustics and history in their walls. The stripped-down arrangements highlighted the power and clarity of her voice, while the smaller spaces allowed for a level of connection with the audience impossible in arenas. But what truly set the tour apart was the ticket structure. Half of all tickets were reserved for people who couldn't normally afford to attend concerts: music therapy patients, students from underfunded schools, clients of women's shelters, and community service organizations. The other half were sold at premium prices to subsidize the free seats, with additional proceeds supporting music education programs in communities like the one where Tara had grown up. "It's completely unorthodox," Vanessa had warned. "The profit margin will be much lower than a traditional tour." "I'm not concerned about the profit margin," Tara had replied. "I have enough. This tour is about giving back." The experience proved transformative, not just for the audiences who would never have been able to afford tickets otherwise, but for Tara herself. Performing for people who connected with her music on a profound personal level, rather than as entertainment, reminded her of the power and purpose of her gift. In Detroit, she sang for a group of young women from a recovery program, many of whom had used her songs as anthems of hope during their darkest days. In Chicago, a classroom of music students from an underfunded public school performed their own arrangement of After the Rain before her show, reducing Tara to tears with their heartfelt interpretation. In Atlanta, she invited a young girl with terminal cancer on stage to sing with her, an impromptu duet that went viral not for its technical perfection, but for its raw, emotional truth. By the time the tour reached its final stop in New York, something fundamental had shifted in Tara's relationship with her music and her audience. The commercial aspects of her career, the charts, the sales figures, the industry accolades, had receded in importance, replaced by a deeper understanding of why she sang in the first place. The final show took place in a historic theater in Brooklyn, just blocks from where she and Lily had lived in those struggling days after David's death. The symmetry wasn't lost on Tara as she stood backstage, preparing for her entrance. Leon appeared at her side, offering a bottle of water. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been on a very long journey that somehow led me back home," Tara replied. "That's the best kind of journey." Leon squeezed her shoulder affectionately. "You know, when I first heard you sing, I knew you had something special, but I don't think even I realized just how special." "The voice?" Tara asked. "The heart," Leon corrected. "Plenty of people have good voices. Not many have the courage to use them the way you have." As Tara took the stage for the final performance of the tour, she was struck by the faces before her, a mosaic of New York's diverse population, from wealthy patrons in elegant attire to teenagers from youth programs in jeans and T-shirts. In the front row sat Lily and Kelly, beaming with pride, alongside Marcus Chen, who had documented her journey from that first viral article to this full-circle moment. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Tara began, settling at the piano. "This tour has been about returning to the essence of what music means to me: connection, healing, telling stories that need to be told. And since we're ending where my journey began, I wanted to share something new with you." Her fingers found the opening notes of a song she had written just weeks ago, inspired by her visit to Richard Goldstein in Boston and all that had unfolded since that rainy day outside the pharmacy. "This song is called Full Circle," she explained. "It's about how sometimes our greatest pain leads to our greatest purpose, about how the voice that was once silenced can become the voice that heals." The song told the story not just of her own journey, but of the universal experience of finding meaning in struggle, of turning wounds into wisdom. By the final chorus, the audience was completely silent, many with tears streaming down their faces, not just moved by the beauty of her voice, but by the truth it carried. When the last note faded, there was a beat of perfect silence before the theater erupted in a standing ovation that seemed to physically lift Tara from her seat. But, above the thunder of applause, she caught sight of Lily's face in the front row, her daughter's eyes shining with tears and pride and understanding. That, more than any stadium crowd or platinum record, was the true measure of her success. Later that night, after the stage had been cleared and the audience had departed, Tara found herself alone in the empty theater. She sat at the piano once, more playing softly in the dimmed house lights, savoring the acoustics of the space and the satisfaction of a journey completed. Footsteps in the aisle caught her attention. Lily approached, still in her concert outfit, but with her hair now loose around her shoulders. "I thought I'd find you here," she said, sliding onto the piano bench beside her mother. "Not ready to let it go yet. Just saying goodbye," Tara explained. "This tour has been special." "What happens next?" Lily asked. "Another album? More arenas?" Tara smiled, struck again by her daughter's perceptiveness. "I've been thinking about that, about balance, about keeping music both a profession and a joy." She played a few notes absently. "I think there's room for both in my life, for the big stages and the small moments, for the business of music and the heart of it." Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, a gesture that reminded Tara of when she was younger. "I'm proud of you, Mom, not just because you're famous or successful, but because you didn't let them take your voice away." The words echoed in the empty theatre, a simple truth that encompassed all that had happened since that day in the storage room. Tara had found her voice, lost it, reclaimed it, shared it, and finally understood its true purpose. As they sat, together in the quiet theatre, mother and daughter at a piano, Tara began to sing softly, not for an audience, not for an album, not for anyone but themselves and the moment they shared. The melody was simple, the words emerging spontaneously, a private song for a journey still unfolding. Will Tara continue to find new ways to use her voice for healing and connection? What new challenges might arise as she balances artistic integrity with commercial success? And how will Lily's own journey be shaped by witnessing her mother's transformation? Stay tuned as this remarkable story continues to evolve. 3 years after the Back to Basics tour, Tara sat in a comfortable chair in a Manhattan recording studio, headphones covering her ears as she listened intently to a young woman's voice through the glass. The singer, barely 20, with close-cropped hair and tattoos covering her arms, was recording a demo for Harmony's newest venture, a mentorship program for promising artists from underserved communities. Tara, now firmly established as one of the industry's most respected vocalists, had helped design the program alongside Vanessa. They called it Echo, a nod to the way music reverberates beyond its source, creating ripples of influence that extend far beyond a single voice. "That was beautiful, Zoe," Tara said into the talkback microphone when the song ended. "But I think you're holding something back in the bridge. Can we try it once more?" The young woman nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. "I'll try to dig deeper." "Don't try," Tara advised gently. "Just remember why you wrote the song in the first place. What were you feeling? Who were you singing to?" Zoe closed her eyes, visibly centering herself. When she began the song again, the difference was immediate. The technical precision remained, but now it was infused with an emotional authenticity that transformed the performance from accomplished to arresting. "That's it," Tara said when the final note faded. "That's the magic." After the session concluded, Tara joined Zoe in the control room to review the recordings. The young woman was the third mentee Tara had worked with that year, each bringing different strengths, different stories, different voices that deserved to be heard. "How do you know?" Zoe asked suddenly, looking up from the sound engineer's notes. "How do you know when you've got it right? When you've found your real voice?" Tara considered the question, recognizing in it echoes of her own early uncertainties. "Your body tells you," she said finally. "There's a resonance, not just vocal resonance, but something deeper, a feeling that you're speaking your truth in the most authentic way possible." "Did you always know what your truth was?" Tara laughed. "Hardly. I spent years singing what I thought others wanted to hear, trying to fit into existing boxes, trying to sound like artists I admired. It wasn't until I lost everything that I found my own voice." She told Zoe an abbreviated version of her story, the storage room, the firing, the subway discovery, the unlikely journey that followed. The young woman listened with rapt attention, occasionally nodding in recognition of universal struggles despite their different backgrounds. "So basically I need to get fired from a crappy job and go viral on the subway," Zoe quipped when Tara finished. "No," Tara replied with a smile. "You need to find what makes your voice uniquely yours, your experiences, your perspective, your truth. That's what connects with people, not technical perfection." As they wrapped up the session, Tara reflected on how much she enjoyed this aspect of her career, nurturing new talent, passing on not just technical skills, but the harder-won wisdom about artistry and authenticity. The Echo program had quickly become one of her greatest sources of professional satisfaction, alongside her continued recording and performance schedule. Her own career had evolved in ways she could never have predicted. After the Back to Basics tour, she had indeed returned to larger venues, but with a different approach, one that preserved the intimacy and connection of smaller spaces while accommodating larger audiences. Her fourth album had explored new musical territory, incorporating influences from jazz, gospel, and world music, while maintaining the emotional honesty that had become her signature. More surprisingly, she had ventured into composing for film, creating soundtracks that told stories without words, stretching her musical vocabulary in new directions. Her score for a critically acclaimed documentary about women rebuilding their lives after tragedy had earned her an Academy Award nomination, adding an unexpected chapter to her already remarkable story. Through it all, Tara had maintained the balance she had discussed with Lily that night in the empty theatre, keeping music both a profession and a joy, finding spaces in her life for both public performance and private expression. Lily, now 17 and preparing for college, had developed her own relationship with music, not as a performer like her mother, but as a composer and arranger with a gift for complex harmonies and unexpected melodic turns. Watching her daughter discover her own creative voice had been one of the greatest joys of Tara's life. As Tara left the studio that evening, the early autumn air crisp against her face, her phone buzzed with a text from Leon. "Listen to this track. Just finished mixing. Could be the opener for the new album?" She stepped to the side of the busy sidewalk, put in her earbuds, and pressed play. The music that filled her ears was unlike anything she had recorded before. Rhythmically complex, harmonically adventurous, with space built in for her voice to soar above the instrumental texture. Leon had been pushing her to explore new musical territory for the upcoming album, encouraged by the success of her soundtrack work. "You've proven you can sing anything," he had told her. "Why not challenge yourself with something completely different?" Tara closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her, imagining where her voice might fit within the sophisticated arrangement. It was intimidating, well outside her comfort zone, but also exhilarating. Even after 4 albums and countless performances, there were still new territories to explore, new aspects of her voice to discover. She texted back, "Love it. Scary but exciting. Let's go for it." Leon's response came immediately. "That's my girl, always willing to leap without a net." The phrase made her smile. How far she had come from the woman who had been afraid to sing outside a storage room, who had thought her dreams were long buried, who had believed her voice was only noticed when it was a problem. The contrast between then and now struck her anew as she continued her walk home. The uncertainty and fear that had once defined her days had been replaced by confidence and purpose. The silence that had once seemed deafening after David's death had been filled with music and laughter and new connections. And her voice, the gift she had almost surrendered, had become not just her livelihood but her legacy, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined when she sang quietly to herself among expired labels and dusty inventory. As she approached her brownstone, Tara could hear music drifting from an open window, Lily at the piano working through a composition for her college applications. The melody was complex and slightly melancholy, bearing traces of her mother's influence, but with a distinct character all its own. Tara paused on the sidewalk, listening to her daughter's music with a full heart. They had come so far together, survived so much. And now Lily was finding her own voice, preparing to embark on her own journey. The realization brought both joy and a twinge of bittersweetness. In less than a year, Lily would be off to college, likely Juilliard or Berkeley given her talent and the strength of her portfolio. Their daily rhythms, the comfortable routines they had established, would inevitably change. But that too was part of the journey, the continuous evolution, the cycles of growth and change, the courage to embrace new chapters even as beloved ones came to a close. Tara climbed the steps to her front door, the melody of Lily's composition still floating in the air. Whatever the future held, for her career, for her daughter, for the next phase of her life, she would face it with the confidence of a woman who had found her voice, who knew its power, who understood its purpose. The woman who had once been fired for singing too loudly now sang not just for herself, but for all those who still struggled to be heard. And in that purpose, she had found a harmony more beautiful than any she could have imagined in that storage room so many years ago. What new musical directions will Tara explore in her upcoming album? How will Lily's departure for college change their relationship? And what unexpected opportunities might arise as Tara continues to expand her artistic horizons? The answers await in the next chapter of this inspiring journey. Tara stood in the quiet of her Brooklyn brownstone late that autumn evening, watching the last embers of sunset fade beyond the skyline. The house was empty now. Lily away at college, Kelly visiting friends after a long day of editing tour footage. For the first time in years, Tara faced a silence that wasn't punctuated by a melody or the hum of her daughter's laughter. She closed her eyes and listened, tuning into the smallest creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of traffic, the gentle echo of her own breath. In that space, she found a familiar stir of anticipation, as if the world were holding its breath alongside her, waiting for the next note in her song. Her phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. Meeting with the composer tomorrow at 10. Dress comfortably. Tara smiled at the reminder of tomorrow's schedule, a collaboration with a well-regarded film composer who wanted to adapt her new songs into a feature-length cinematic score. It was the kind of invitation that would once have terrified her, but now felt like a natural extension of her creative journey. She opened her laptop and drafted a response. See you then. Looking forward to it. Something deep in her chest hummed at the promise of uncharted artistic territory. She wandered into the music room, where the upright piano stood bathed in the soft glow of a single lamp. A spiral-bound notebook lay open on the bench, filled with sketches of melodies and scribbled thoughts about soundscapes she'd heard in her dreams. Picking it up, she traced her finger along a fragment she'd written weeks ago, a motif that suggested the turning of seasons and the passage of time. Running her hand over the keys, she let the fragment blossom into a full phrase, its bittersweet, tension giving way to a hopeful resolution. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to play without judgment, relishing the way each chord unlocked new colors. By the time her fingertips stilled, Tara recognized the familiar warmth of purpose. It was the same sensation she'd felt in that storage room all those years ago, before worry and shame had eclipsed her confidence. She thought of Richard Goldstein's letter, of the way music had healed even the man who had once silenced her. She thought of Marcus, of Leon, of Kelly's unwavering support, and she thought of Lily, her child grown now, finding her own way, yet still tethered to this shared legacy of song. Outside, the first flurries of snow began to drift from the high sky, settling on the windowsills in delicate patterns. Winter was coming, and with it the demands of a new album release, a supporting tour, and a series of gala appearances for her film work. It was enough to fill both heart and calendar, but Tara knew that the greatest challenge would be preserving that quiet space of creativity she'd just rediscovered. She rose from the bench, patted the notebook, and set a reminder to guard an hour each morning for pure exploration, free from deadlines, free from expectations, free from anything but curiosity. The next morning, after a quiet cup of tea and a few warm-up vocal exercises, Tara slipped out for a walk through her old neighborhood. The streets where she and David had walked hand in hand were still lined with their memories, even as new businesses and apartment buildings took root. She passed the pharmacy where she'd once worked, its windows dark on a Sunday morning. A small ache tightened in her chest at the sight, but she reminded herself that the past had shaped her, not defined her. She whispered a silent thank you for every stumbling block and every discouraging word, for without them, she might never have heard her own voice clearly. When she arrived at the studio to meet with the composer, she brought the same inner calm with her. The composer greeted her warmly, and together they spent hours experimenting with instrumentation, strings dissolving into electronics, percussive textures echoing wind and water, literal and metaphorical layers weaving together. Tara offered lyrical snippets, recordings of her humming, suggestions for vocal treatments that would blur the line between voice and instrument. By the end of the afternoon, they had crafted the opening theme for the film, an ethereal passage that began with a lone vocal breath and expanded into a lush orchestral sweep. Tara closed her eyes as they played it back, feeling the music sweep through her like sunlight through stained glass. "Brilliant," she whispered, reaching out to steady herself against the mixing console. "It's exactly what the story needs." "Your voice is the guiding thread," the composer said, smiling. "Every time I hear you at the microphone, I want to build the world around you." Tara felt both humbled and exhilarated. This collaboration would mark a new chapter, one where her voice ventured beyond song into the realm of storytelling through music and image. She signed the agreement and left the studio with renewed energy, the snowy streets seeming to light up around her. That evening, she video-called Lily, who was tucked into her dorm room in Boston. The college student's eyes shone with excitement as she described her first semester, a music theory class that challenged her, a composition project that sparked new ideas, and friends who loved her for her roommate's mother. "Mom," she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "they've started using one of your songs in the Student Film Festival trailer. I saw it online and thought, that's my mom." She laughed, then grew thoughtful. "It makes me proud and a little embarrassed." Tara laughed too, relief washing through her. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Your music is amazing and you deserve to share it." They talked late into the night about college life and music, and the delicate balance of growing independence and familial bond. When they finally said goodnight, Tara hovered for a moment, feeling the warmth of their connection despite the distance. She closed her laptop and allowed herself to sink into sleep, buoyed by love and possibility. Winter deepened, and with it, the demands on her time. She recorded the film score, fine-tuning every nuance. She convened with Harmony Records for the rollout of her next album, tentatively titled Echoes of Home, a collection of songs that carried forward the themes she'd discovered in the mentorship program and in her own personal reflections. She wrote liner notes that acknowledged her sources of strength, her daughter's unwavering belief, her friend's kindness, the stranger on the subway, and the memory of David's optimism. Between studio sessions, she carved out afternoons for volunteer work at a local music therapy center, where young patients with neurological conditions responded to her voice with smiles and movement. There she met children learning to speak, again through song, veterans reclaiming their voices after trauma, elderly patients whose memories blossomed when she sang lullabies of their youth. Each encounter reaffirmed her conviction that music was a bridge between people, between past and present, between despair and hope. Spring arrived at last, and with it the premiere of the film she had scored. The screening took place in a historic theater, where the audience watched a woman's journey through loss and renewal, accompanied by the music Tara had crafted. As the credits rolled and the lights came up, tears glistened on faces all around her. In the lobby, strangers approached, telling her how deeply they had felt the story and how the music had given it a soul. Tara stood quietly, absorbing each word, aware of the ripple effect her voice could create. Shortly afterward came an invitation to perform at a benefit concert for music education reform alongside childhood heroes whose records she had cherished. She stood backstage that night, watching the last notes of a legendary singer fade, and felt a surge of gratitude to be counted among those voices. When her turn came, she sang a song she had written for Lily's first day of college, an intimate, hopeful ballad about letting go and watching love take flight. By the final chorus, the audience had managed to hush, save for the soft hum of shared emotion. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, but Tara only saw her daughter and niece. In the front row, their expressions alight with pride. As she left the stage, Vanessa appeared at her elbow. "You outdid yourself," she said, handing her a bottle of water. Tara smiled, the high of performance mingling with quiet contentment. "It was the right song, for the right moment." "Always, it seems," Vanessa replied. I think there's a TED Talk or two waiting for you in the next year, Tara laughed. Maybe. But for now, I'm fine just singing. Over the following months, life unfolded with its familiar blend of challenge and joy. She balanced her album's release with promotional appearances, but refused to let the demands erase her daily rituals: morning walks, evening piano improvisations, weekly dinners with Lily and Kelly, even simple Sunday visits to the local bakery for fresh bread. She nurtured her relationships, tending them as carefully as she did her craft. Lily returned home for summer break, bringing with her the excitement of her own creative projects. They spent afternoons writing songs together, Tara playing chords while Lily layered harmonies and sketched orchestral ideas. The music they made was a testament to their bond, a shared language forged in the fires of adversity and tempered by time. One warm evening, as crickets chirped beyond the open windows and fireflies drifted through the garden, Tara sat on the back patio with a notebook in her lap. She was drafting a new song about the winding path that had brought her here, the collisions, the surprises, the kindness of strangers, the persistence of hope. She paused and looked up at the stars, thinking of David, and whispered a gratitude. That felt like a benediction. Thank you for believing in me. Her life was no longer defined by what she had lost, but by what she had discovered. A voice that could comfort and uplift, that could bridge divides and spark transformation. She carried that voice with her into every room, every conversation, every note she sang, and in return that voice carried her forward, through the seasons of her career and the seasons of her heart, ever onward, ever toward whatever promise lay beyond the next melody. The future was an open score, unwritten, and inviting. Tara Matthews, once silenced, had become a storyteller whose medium was song, whose message was resilience, and whose legacy was measured not in accolades, but in the hearts she had touched along the way. As she leaned back and let the melody flow from her pen, she knew that, come what may, she would never stop singing.